She clashed with a millionaire at a clothing store. Now he can't stop thinking about her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft glow of track lighting washed over polished racks of tailored jackets and neatly folded shirts. The air smelled faintly of new fabric and clean wood, the kind of store where prices were not printed in bold. It was the kind of place where people walked slowly, confidently, as if they belonged there. She did not. She paused just inside the doorway, fingers tightening around the strap of her worn shoulder bag. The glass reflected her back at her, and she caught the details she tried not to think about. A simple coat she had bought secondhand. Shoes with scuffed toes she had cleaned twice that morning. She told herself she was only here for a reason. One good reason. She needed something presentable for a job interview, and the clearance sign in the window had promised a chance. She took a breath and stepped in. A sales associate glanced at her, eyes flicking quickly from her shoes to her coat, then away. No greeting, no smile, just silence. She pretended not to notice and moved toward a rack near the back, running her fingers along the sleeves, careful, respectful, as if touching too boldly might give her away. That was when it happened. A sharp voice cut through the low murmur of the store. "Excuse me, that display is not for browsing." She turned, startled, and saw a man standing a few feet away, tall, well-dressed, calm in a way that felt deliberate. He was holding a jacket, examining the stitching, but his attention was clearly on her. "I am not touching the display," she said, keeping her voice even. "I am looking at this rack." He looked again, then gestured lightly. "Those pieces are reserved. Staff will assist you if needed." Something in his tone hit a nerve. Not the words themselves, but the assumption behind them. The quiet certainty that she needed permission. Her shoulders squared. "I did not ask for permission," she said. "And I do not need assistance to look at clothes." A few heads turned. The sales associate hurried over, eyes wide, trying to smooth the moment. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes," she said before the man could answer. "I am being talked down to like I do not belong." The man finally met her eyes fully, and for the first time, his calm wavered. "That was not my intention," he said. "I was only clarifying store policy." "Store policy," she repeated, a bitter laugh escaping before she could stop it. "Funny how policy only seems to apply to certain people." The associate froze, unsure whose side to take. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. "I came here to find something decent," she said, her voice steady now. "Not to be judged. If that is too much to ask, I will take my business elsewhere." She turned to leave, heart pounding, cheeks warm, dignity held together by sheer will. Behind her, the man stood still, watching as she walked out through the glass doors and back into the noise of the street. He did not follow, but long after she was gone, he remained there, jacket forgotten in his hands, replaying her words, the way she had stood her ground, the way she had looked at him, not impressed, not intimidated, but honest. For the first time in a long while, someone had spoken to him without knowing who he was, and he could not get her out of his mind. She did not stop walking until the glass doors were far behind her. Outside, the late afternoon air felt heavier than it should have. Traffic rolled past, horns distant, ordinary life moving on, as if nothing had happened. She kept her pace steady, even when her chest tightened, even when the sting behind her eyes threatened to spill over. She refused to give the moment more than it deserved, but it followed her anyway. By the time she reached the bus stop, her hands were trembling, not from anger anymore, but from the effort of holding herself together. She sat on the cold metal bench, set her bag at her feet, and stared straight ahead. The image of the store kept replaying, the look, the tone, the assumption. She hated that it still affected her. She pulled her coat tighter and checked the time on her phone. If the bus was late again, she would be cutting it close. Tonight mattered. Tomorrow mattered even more. At home, her apartment was quiet in the way only small spaces could be. One room, thin walls, a flickering kitchen light she kept meaning to replace. She dropped her bag on the chair and kicked off her shoes, wincing as she flexed her toes. Standing all day took its toll, but there was no one to complain to. Complaints did not pay rent. She opened the closet and looked at the few items hanging inside. Practical clothes, work clothes, nothing special, nothing that said professional. She reached for the garment bag tucked in the corner and unzipped it carefully, as if the sound itself cost money. Inside was the jacket she had come for, or at least something like it. She laid it out on the bed, smoothing the fabric with both hands. It was not perfect, it was not designer, but it was clean, pressed, and neutral enough to pass. Enough to give her a chance to be taken seriously in a room where chances were rare. She sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled slowly. This was why the moment in the store hurt more than it should have. Not because of pride alone, but because everything she did lately felt like walking a narrow line. One misstep, one bad impression, and the ground beneath her would give way. Her phone buzzed. A reminder notification flashed across the screen. Interview, 9:30 tomorrow morning. She closed her eyes for a moment and rested her elbows on her knees. The truth was simple. She could not afford to be invisible, and she could not afford to be underestimated. Rent was due in less than 2 weeks. Her savings account had been shrinking faster than she wanted to admit. The diner had cut her hours again, promising it was temporary, always temporary. She had smiled and said she understood, because understanding was expected from people like her. She did not come from money. She did not have a safety net. There was no family call she could make if things went wrong. Everything rested on showing up, again and again, and proving she was worth a seat at the table. That was why she had spoken up in the store. Not because she enjoyed conflict, not because she wanted attention, but because letting it slide would have meant accepting a story about herself she refused to believe. She stood and moved to the bathroom mirror. Under the harsh light, she studied her reflection. Tired eyes, determined jaw. She practiced a small professional smile, the kind that said capable without sounding desperate. It felt strange, but she held it anyway. Tomorrow, she would walk into that interview room with her head high. She would answer questions clearly. She would not apologize for where she came from, or how she dressed, or how hard she had worked to get there. Back across town, the clothing store was closing for the evening. The man from earlier still stood near the same rack, though he had long since stopped shopping. The associate had tried to re-engage him twice. He barely noticed. His thoughts kept drifting back to the woman who had walked out, shoulders squared, voice steady, dignity intact. He could not remember the last time someone had challenged him without fear or flattery. He glanced at the door once more, then finally set the jacket back in its place. Somehow, without knowing her name or her story, he already knew one thing. That encounter had not been the end of something. It was the beginning. The next morning arrived too quickly. She woke before the alarm, the gray light barely pushing through the blinds. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the distant sound of traffic and a neighbor's footsteps above her. Then reality settled in. Interview day. She sat up, heart already beating faster than it should. There was no room for hesitation today, no margin for error. In the bathroom, steam fogged the mirror as she washed her face. She tied her hair back neatly, choosing simple over stylish, professional over hopeful. When she stepped back into the bedroom, the jacket lay folded on the chair, waiting. She picked it up carefully and slipped it on. It fit well enough. Not perfectly, but well enough to make her feel like she belonged in a room that had not been built with her in mind. She studied herself one last time, then grabbed her bag and headed out. The interview was downtown, in a glass building that reflected the sky so clearly it felt unreal. Inside, the lobby was quiet and bright, marble floors echoing with each step. She checked in at the front desk and took a seat, folding her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. When her name was called, she stood immediately. The interview itself passed in a blur. Questions about experience, about handling pressure, about teamwork. She answered honestly, carefully, grounding herself in the truth of what she knew and what she had survived. When it was over, she thanked them and walked out with the same steady posture she had practiced the night before. Outside, the air felt lighter. She did not know if she had gotten the job, but she knew she had shown up as herself, without shrinking. That had to count for something. Later that afternoon, she stopped by a small tailor a few blocks from her apartment. The sign was faded, the window crowded with old mannequins, but the prices were fair. She stepped inside, jacket folded over her arm. "I just need a small adjustment," she said, setting it on the counter. "Nothing fancy." The older woman behind the counter nodded, eyes kind, measuring tape already in hand. "Job interview?" She smiled faintly. "Yes." "Then we will make it lucky," the woman said, and got to work. As the pins were placed and the seams marked, she felt a quiet sense of resolve settle in her chest. This jacket was more than fabric now. It was proof of effort, of intention, of a line she refused to step back behind. Across the city, the man from the store sat in the back seat of a car, watching buildings slide past the window. Meetings filled his calendar. Calls came and went. His assistant reviewed schedules, numbers, timelines. He answered when needed, nodded when expected. But his mind kept drifting. He kept seeing her standing there, shoulders squared, refusing to soften her words for his comfort. He remembered the way she had said she came there to find something decent, the way her voice did not waver when she spoke about being judged. Most people adjusted themselves around him without realizing it. Their tone shifted. Their posture changed. They laughed a little too quickly or agreed a little too easily. She had done none of that. At a red light, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. On impulse, he searched the store inventory system, scrolling through recent clearance sales. He did not know why he did it. He told himself it was curiosity. One item stood out: a jacket, neutral color, modest price, recently altered at a nearby tailor. He stared at the screen longer than necessary. Later that evening, she returned home and hung the jacket carefully in her closet. She did not know yet whether the interview would lead anywhere, but she knew this much. Tomorrow, she would wear it again if she had to, and the day after that. She was building something, piece by piece, and without realizing it, so was he. Because somewhere between a clearance rack and a quiet tailor shop, a single moment had taken root, a small, unplanned seed planted by a clash neither of them could forget, and in time, it would demand to be seen. 2 days later, life settled back into its familiar rhythm. She worked the morning shift at the diner, moving between tables with practiced efficiency, coffee refills, polite smiles, short conversations that never lingered long enough to become anything else. Her feet ached by noon, but she welcomed the distraction. Staying busy kept her from overthinking the interview, the jacket, the fragile hope she refused to name. When her shift ended, she clocked out and stepped back onto the sidewalk, the afternoon sun warm against her face. She checked her phone. No missed calls, no emails, not yet. She told herself that was fine. Instead of heading straight home, she turned down a side street and stopped at a small neighborhood coffee shop. It was nothing special: mismatched chairs, soft music playing from an old speaker, the kind of place where people came to think, or hide, or both. She ordered a simple black coffee and took a seat near the window, setting her bag at her feet. She pulled out a folded sheet of paper from her pocket, notes she had scribbled the night before, follow-ups she planned to send, reminders to herself about what she had said well and what she wished she had explained better. She read them slowly, lips pressed together in concentration. That was when a familiar voice spoke from behind her. "Is this seat taken?" She looked up, surprised, and for a split second did not recognize him out of context. No tailored suit, no polished store lighting, just a man in a simple jacket, holding a paper cup, waiting. Then it clicked. Her posture stiffened. "No," she said carefully. "It is not." He nodded and sat across from her, setting his coffee down. There was a pause, brief but noticeable, the kind that carried the weight of unfinished moments. "I did not expect to see you here," he said. "Neither did I," she replied. Her tone was neutral, guarded, but not unkind. "I owe you an apology," he continued, "for the other day." She studied his face, searching for something false. She did not find it. "You do," she said simply, "but I am not interested in reliving it." "That is fair," he said. "I only wanted to say that I should have listened more than I spoke." She looked back down at her notes, then folded the paper and slipped it into her bag. "People usually do not," she said, "especially in places like that." He smiled faintly, not offended. "You are right." They sat in silence for a moment, the noise of the cafe filling the space between them. Outside, someone laughed. A bus hissed as it pulled away from the curb. "Interview?" he asked, nodding toward her bag. Yes, she said, this morning. And? She hesitated, then shrugged. I did my best. That is all I can control. He lifted his cup slightly. That counts for more than people think. She met his eyes again, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. You sound like someone who is used to being listened to. He smiled, but there was something restrained about it. I am trying to change that. She did not respond right away. Instead, she took a sip of her coffee, then set the cup down. Well, she said, thank you for the apology. You are welcome, he replied. And for what it is worth, you were right, about being judged. The tension eased, just a little. They talked then, cautiously at first, about the neighborhood, about the cafe, about work, without specifics. She mentioned the diner. He said he worked in business, vaguely, and left it at that. He did not push. She did not ask. What surprised her most was how normal it felt. No posturing, no assumptions, just conversation, unpolished and real. She found herself laughing once, then stopping, as if unsure she was allowed to. He noticed, and the corner of his mouth lifted again. When she finally stood to leave, he rose as well. Maybe, he said, we could continue this conversation sometime, if you want. She considered him for a moment, then nodded once. Maybe. As she walked out into the afternoon light, she felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not hope, not yet, just curiosity. Behind her, he remained standing by the window, watching as she disappeared down the street. For the second time, she had walked away from him without knowing who he really was. And for the second time, he knew one thing with certainty. He wanted to see her again. The days that followed unfolded quietly, almost cautiously, as if neither of them wanted to disturb whatever had begun. They met again the following week, this time by intention. The same coffee shop, the same corner by the window. She arrived first, ordered her usual, and chose a seat that felt familiar now. When he walked in a few minutes later, scanning the room before spotting her, something in her chest tightened in a way she did not expect. You remembered, she said, as he set his cup down. I said maybe, he replied. I was hoping it meant yes. She smiled despite herself. Their conversations stretched longer each time. Not dramatic, not confessional, just honest. They spoke about small things that slowly revealed bigger truths. She talked about the diner, the regulars who tipped in loose change, the rhythm of a job that demanded cheer even on hard days. He listened without interrupting, without offering solutions, as if he understood that listening itself mattered. He talked about work too, still vague, still careful. Long hours, responsibility, the weight of decisions that affected more than just himself. He did not say more, and she did not press him. There was a comfort in not knowing everything. One evening, they walked together after leaving the cafe, the sky already darkening. Street lights flickered on as they moved side by side, hands close but not touching. You do not talk about yourself much, she said, glancing at him. He considered that. I am used to being defined by what I do, not who I am. She nodded slowly. That sounds lonely. He looked at her then, really looked, as if no one had ever named it so plainly. It can be. Another time, he stopped by the diner near closing. She noticed him immediately, out of place among vinyl booths and chipped mugs. When she brought his coffee, she raised an eyebrow. You know this is not exactly your scene. He smiled. I wanted to see your world. That caught her off guard. She watched as he thanked the cook, as he waited patiently, as he listened when one of the regulars complained loudly about the weather. He did not rush. He did not look bored. He seemed present. When her shift ended, they sat in a booth and shared a slice of pie, splitting the cost without comment. For a moment, she forgot about the gap between their lives. If there was one, it did not feel important here. At home later that night, she lay awake longer than usual. Not anxious, just thoughtful. She replayed their conversations, his questions, the way he never talked down to her, the way he seemed genuinely curious about her thoughts. She told herself not to overthink it. Across town, he stood on his balcony, city lights stretching endlessly below. His phone buzzed with unread messages and missed calls. He ignored them, leaning against the railing, thinking about the way she laughed softly when surprised, about how she spoke her mind without apology. No one in his world spoke to him that way. At their next meeting, she brought her jacket, draped over the back of the chair. He noticed immediately. That looks good on you, he said. She glanced at it. "It is my lucky piece." "Lucky?" he asked. "It reminds me why I do not stay quiet," she replied. He nodded, understanding more than she realized. They walked again that night, slower this time. At the corner where their paths split, they stopped. The moment stretched, filled with words neither of them said. "I should go," she said finally. "I know," he replied. She hesitated, then added, "I am glad we ran into each other, even if it started badly." "So am I," he said. As she walked away, he stayed where he was, hands in his pockets, watching until she turned the corner. Neither of them noticed it yet, but something had shifted. What began as a clash had softened into connection, not built on status, not built on illusion, just two people meeting each other where they stood, and unknowingly walking closer to a truth that would soon change everything. The reveal did not come gently. It arrived on a Friday evening, wrapped in light and sound, and a room full of people who looked like they belonged there. She stood just inside the entrance of the downtown showroom, fingers curled around the strap of her bag. Glass walls rose around her, reflecting chandeliers and polished floors. Everywhere she looked, there were tailored suits, sleek dresses, low laughter layered with confidence. She had almost turned around twice before walking in. She was only there because of the email, an invitation forwarded by the tailor she had visited weeks earlier. A local brand event, open to the public, networking, refreshments. No pressure, the message had said. Just come if you are curious. She told herself curiosity was harmless. She spotted him across the room almost immediately. He stood near the center, posture relaxed, speaking with a small group of people who leaned in as he talked. He looked different here, not warmer, not colder, just complete. Like the room had been built around him. Her heart skipped once, then again. Relief came first. He was here, then confusion. He had never mentioned this, not the event, not the place, not the ease with which people deferred to him. She took a step closer, weaving between clusters of guests. As she moved, snippets of conversation floated past her. His vision for the brand, 15 years ago when he started, never misses these events. She slowed. The lights dimmed slightly, music faded. A woman stepped onto the small stage at the front of the room, microphone in hand. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she said, smiling broadly. "This brand was built on the belief that quality and integrity matter, and none of this would exist without the man who made it possible." Applause rippled through the crowd. "Please join me in welcoming our founder and chief executive officer." The name followed. She did not hear anything else. The room seemed to tilt as he stepped forward, accepting the microphone with a practiced nod. The applause grew louder, cameras lifted, people turned. Her breath caught. It was him. Not a coincidence, not a misunderstanding, not a small omission. A millionaire. The man behind the store, the brand, the power she had felt without understanding. Her mind raced backward through every moment they had shared. The coffee shop, the diner, the walks, his careful vagueness, her trust. He spoke confidently now, thanking the team, acknowledging partners, speaking about growth and responsibility. His voice was the same, calm, measured, but everything else had changed. She felt suddenly exposed, like every word she had spoken to him had been said without full consent, like the ground beneath her had shifted without warning. As the applause rose again, she turned and walked toward the exit. She did not make it far. "Wait." His voice reached her just before the door, not amplified now, just him. She stopped but did not turn. "I did not plan for you to find out like this," he said quietly. She faced him then, eyes steady, jaw tight. "You did plan not to tell me at all." He did not deny it. "I wanted you to see me as a person first," he said, "not as this." "This," she repeated, gesturing around them, "is not a detail you forget to mention." "I know," he said, "and I am sorry." Her chest tightened. "You let me think you were something else. You let me speak freely, knowing you had all the power in the room." "That is not how I see it," he said. "You had the power." She shook her head once. "You do not get to decide that." People passed nearby, unaware, the hum of the event continuing behind them. She lowered her voice. "I told you who I was, where I worked, what I struggled with. You chose silence." "I chose fear," he said. "Fear that once you knew, everything would change." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You were right," she said. "It has." She reached for the door, this time opening it. Behind her, the applause began again, calling him back. She stepped out into the night, the cool air sharp against her skin, heart pounding. Inside, he remained where he was, watching the door close. For the first time, his success felt hollow, because the one person he had wanted to know him without the title had just walked away knowing nothing else. The distance between them did not close. It hardened. She did not reply to his messages. Not the careful apology he sent the next morning. Not the shorter one after that. Days passed, then a week, and silence became its own answer. She threw herself into work with a focus that bordered on discipline. The diner shifts ended, the new job began, and her days filled with onboarding meetings, training manuals, unfamiliar systems. She welcomed the exhaustion. It left no room for questions she was not ready to face. At night, though, the quiet crept back in. She replayed the reveal again and again. Not the applause, not the title, but the moment she realized how easily power could sit between two people without being named. How freely she had spoken, believing the ground was level. That was what hurt. Across the city, the consequences arrived quickly. The new training policies did not land softly. A senior board member called him into a closed-door meeting and shut the glass behind them. The tone was polite. The message was not. "This direction is admirable," the man said, folding his hands, "but it is inefficient. You're slowing down sales to make a statement." "It is not a statement," he replied. "It is a standard." The board member leaned back. "Standards cost money." "So does turnover," he said evenly. The meeting ended without agreement. 2 days later, a long-standing retail partner withdrew from a planned expansion, citing misalignment in brand priorities. The loss was measurable, the impact immediate. His assistant hesitated before speaking. "If you want to pause the rollout, the board will support it." He looked at the figures on the screen, then away. "If doing the right thing costs me comfort," he said, "then comfort was never leadership." The rollout continued. He did not tell her any of this. He did not want redemption through confession. He wanted change to stand on its own. They ran into each other late one evening, unintentionally. She was leaving the building where she worked, coat pulled tight against the cold, when she saw him across the street. No driver, no entourage, just him, waiting without expectation. "I am not here to explain," he said before she could speak. "I am here because I owe you honesty." She crossed the street slowly. "You already gave me honesty. Too late." He nodded. "That is fair." They stood under the streetlight, the space between them deliberate. "I did not understand what silence looks like when you have power," he said. "I do now." She searched his face. "Understanding is easy. Accountability is not." "I am learning the difference," he replied. She exhaled. "I am not ready to forgive you." "I am not asking you to," he said. That was the first thing he said that did not feel like a defense. "I need time," she said. "And I need to know that what you changed was not just for me." "It was not," he answered. "And it will not stop if you never come back." She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. "Good," she said, "because anything else would make it meaningless." She walked away, and this time he did not follow. The losses continued quietly. A delayed opening, a tense board call, a question in the press about priorities. He did not reverse course, and she, watching from a distance without knowing the full cost, felt something unfamiliar begin to replace anger. Not trust, but the possibility of it. The opportunity arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. An email from a regional firm she had interviewed with weeks earlier, one she had almost forgotten about. The subject line was simple: offer of employment. When she opened it, her breath caught. The position was real. The pay was higher than what she earned now. Not life-changing, but stabilizing. The office was in another city, 2 hours away. Far enough to mean a clean break. Far enough to mean starting over without shadows. She leaned back in her chair and stared at the screen. This was the safer path. No complicated history, no imbalance of power, No unanswered questions, just work, growth, and distance. Everything she had told herself she wanted. She asked for a day to think. That evening she walked without direction, phone heavy in her pocket. She did not think about him at first. She thought about independence, about momentum, about choosing herself without compromise. When the invitation arrived later that night, she almost ignored it. A community networking event, hosted at the flagship clothing store. The same one. She stood in her apartment for a long time before deciding. Not because of him, she told herself, because she needed to see something with clear eyes. The store felt different when she walked in. Not just renovated, reoriented. Sales associates greeted everyone warmly, their tone consistent, unmeasured by appearance. Conversations flowed easily. People lingered. There was no tension in the air. Then she saw the wall. Photographs, simple and unposed, workers, customers, faces she recognized and others she did not. Beneath each image, a single sentence. Dignity is not something you earn, it is something you bring with you. Her throat tightened. This was never meant to be a campaign. She turned. He stood a few steps away, hands visible, posture open. No suit, no introduction. It was meant to be a correction, he continued, even if no one noticed. You did not know I would come, she said. No, he replied. I hoped, but I did not plan for it. She walked slowly along the wall, reading each caption, seeing herself in moments that were not hers alone. You lost something for this, she said quietly. It was not a question. Yes, he answered, and I would lose more. She faced him then. I was offered another job, in another city. He nodded. No surprise, no attempt to persuade. I'm not staying because of what you changed, she said carefully. I'm staying because of who you became when it cost you something. His expression softened, not with relief, but respect. I'm not asking you to choose me, he said, only to see me clearly. She considered him, the store, the wall, the choice in front of her. I am choosing honesty, she said, wherever that leads. They walked together toward the exit, not close, not distant, equal. The grand gesture was not an apology, it was alignment, and for the first time since the beginning, she did not feel pulled toward him. She felt steady beside him, ready to decide what came next. The decision did not announce itself, it unfolded quietly, the way most real commitments do. She accepted the job offer 2 days later, not the one in the other city, the one she had earned here. It was not the safer option, it paid less, it demanded more. But it allowed her to keep building something on her own terms. When she told him, he did not smile right away. Are you sure? He asked. Yes, she said, because it is mine. That mattered to both of them. They moved forward slowly, without labels, without promises that felt heavier than they could carry. Some days they walked together after work. Other days, they did not see each other at all. Space was no longer distance. It was respect. She watched him continue to take the harder path. Another store manager resigned rather than adopt the new standards. A short article questioned whether the brand had lost its edge. He did not respond publicly. He responded by staying consistent. When she asked him once if he regretted it, he answered without hesitation. No, he said. If leadership only works when it is easy, then it was never real. Months passed. The store that once made her feel invisible now felt different. Not perfect, but aware. She noticed it in small things. A sales associate kneeling to speak to a child at eye level. A manager stepping in when a customer spoke dismissively to an employee. Quiet corrections, daily choices. One evening, he asked her to walk with him after closing. The street was calm, the air cool. They stopped outside the storefront where it had all begun. He did not speak at first, neither did she. I want to say something, he said finally, and you can say no. She met his eyes. Okay, I will never ask you to be smaller so I can feel bigger, he said. And if I ever forget that, you should walk away. She did not answer immediately. She thought about the jacket, the interview, the wall of photographs, the cost he had paid without expecting applause. I do not need you to save me, she said. I need you to stand beside me. That is all I want, he replied. He did not kneel. He did not reach for a ring. Instead, he held out his hand. Will you keep choosing this with me? He asked, even when it costs something. She looked at his hand, then placed hers in it. Yes, she said, as long as we both do. They stood there for a moment longer, the city moving around them, unaware. What began as a clash had become a partnership, not built on wealth, not built on status, but on dignity, accountability, and the courage to change when it mattered. Because love is not who you are when it is easy. It is who you are when it costs you something.